14-year-old Jordan Blake was dead for nearly 10 minutes. No heartbeat. No breath. But what happened while his body lay lifeless stunned doctors and changed him forever. He claims he left his body, entered a realm more real than Earth, and returned with a terrifying message from Jesus himself. This isn't just a near-death story. It's a warning. A calling. And if you're reading this, it might be meant for you. What he saw will shake you.
My name is Jordan Blake. I'm 14 years old and I live in a small town called Cedar Springs, Colorado. It's one of those places where everything moves slow and nothing ever seems to change. I live with my dad, Daniel. He used to be a pastor, but after my mom died when I was little, he kind of lost himself. Now he works as a mechanic. He's a good man, just quiet. We don't talk much about feelings, but he's always there. The day everything changed started like a regular Saturday. It was early July and my dad had promised we'd go to Pine Valley Lake for the weekend. We hadn't done something like that in a long time, so I was looking forward to it. I'd had a rough week, some stuff at school, nothing major, but I'd been feeling kind of off. Like I was walking around with a weight in my chest I couldn't name. Everything just felt heavy. That morning I remember the sky being strange. Not stormy, not sunny, just gray and flat, like someone had erased the color out of it. The air was thick, but not with heat. More like with silence. No birds, no wind, just stillness. I opened the front door and stood there for a second. Felt like the world was holding its breath. As we packed the truck, I noticed Dad was more quiet than usual. He kept glancing at me, like he wanted to say something but couldn't find the words. I caught him looking once and asked, "You okay?" He smiled, but it didn't reach his eyes. "Yeah," he said. "Just feels like one of those days." I nodded, pretending I didn't feel it too. But I did. Deep in my gut, I felt like something big was waiting for me. I didn't know if it was good or bad, just that it was close. The drive to the lake was quiet. Normally we'd play music or talk about whatever was going on. But that day we both stared out the windows. The road felt longer than usual. Trees looked taller. Everything had this strange clarity, like it was being shown to me for the last time. I couldn't shake the feeling that the day had already been written, like I was just following the steps of something that had already happened. When we got to the lake, I didn't jump out of the truck like I normally would. I sat there for a moment, staring out at the water. It looked peaceful, but something about it made my chest tighten. My dad looked over at me and said, "You don't have to be brave today." I didn't know what he meant, but the words stuck with me. I didn't know it yet, but that would be the last moment I'd ever feel like the same person again. We unloaded our stuff and set up near the edge of the lake. A few other families were around, but it wasn't crowded. My dad laid out a blanket and sat down with a bottle of water, telling me to go enjoy myself. I walked toward the dock, kicking off my shoes. The water looked still, almost too still. I hesitated for a second, then dove in. At first, it felt normal. The water was cold, but not shockingly so. I kicked my legs and swam forward, letting myself sink a little just to feel the weight of it. Then something changed. It started as a tug. Not a wave, not a current, something else. Like the water had hands and they were grabbing at my ankles. I tried to kick back up, but I didn't move. I wasn't being pulled fast, just held. Like something was making sure I didn't leave. I expected panic to hit me, but it didn't. That's what was strange. I didn't feel scared. My mind went quiet, like it knew fighting wouldn't matter. My arms stopped moving. My lungs didn't scream. Everything just slowed down. The sounds of the world disappeared. I couldn't hear the water moving, couldn't hear people laughing from the shore. Even the beating of my own heart faded away. Then the light started to dim. Not suddenly, but slowly, like a curtain being drawn over the sun. My eyes were open, but I couldn't see anymore. The world turned from blue to gray to black. It wasn't like falling asleep. It was like being erased. I remember the exact moment I let go. It wasn't a choice, not really. It just happened. One second I was in my body and the next I wasn't. I didn't float up. I didn't go down. I just stopped being in the water. The cold was gone. The pressure was gone. Even time was gone. I was nowhere and nothing and somehow still me. And in that space, that silence, something waited. I didn't know what it was, but it wasn't empty. It was full of something I couldn't name yet. That's when I knew I had died. At first, I didn't know what was happening. I wasn't in the water anymore, but I wasn't anywhere I could explain either. I was just floating, not up, not down, just away from everything I'd ever known. I didn't feel my arms or legs. I didn't need to breathe. I wasn't afraid. It felt like something had taken all the noise, all the weight, and left me with just myself. Whatever part of me was still me. I couldn't explain it then, but it felt real. More real than the lake, more real than the world I'd left. I turned, or maybe I didn't. There was no body to move, but something in me shifted and I saw it. The world I knew, the trees, the lake, the sky, it was peeling away like paper. Layer by layer, it folded back, not like it was disappearing, but like I was seeing behind it. Behind the normal. Behind what people call real. And then the tunnel appeared. It wasn't dark like you see in movies. It was made of light, but not just light, awareness. It glowed, but not with color. More like with knowing. I don't even know how to explain that. It didn't shine on things. It was things. It was made of understanding. I didn't walk into it. I didn't decide anything. I was already moving, being drawn forward like I belonged to it. I felt completely safe, but also completely sure that something big was coming. Not scary big, just more. Like the truth behind everything was just a few steps ahead. I wasn't using my eyes, I was understanding. The tunnel didn't speak, but I could feel it had something to show me. Every part of it felt alive, like even the air was watching me, waiting. And the silence, it wasn't empty. It had a heartbeat. I could feel it in the space around me. Like everything in this place had its own rhythm, its own reason. That was when I knew I wasn't dreaming. I wasn't imagining anything. I had crossed over. And whatever was on the other side, it was already expecting me. As I moved through the tunnel, I felt something shift again. Like the space itself opened wider. The light around me grew brighter, not in a blinding way, but in a way that made everything inside me feel exposed. Like I couldn't hide anything, even if I wanted to. Then I saw him. At first, he was just light, so bright it had form, but not shape like a person. It was more like the light was a person. He didn't walk toward me, and I didn't move toward him, but somehow we were getting closer. And when we finally met, it wasn't with words. He didn't speak out loud, but I heard everything he said like it was being poured straight into my chest. He didn't say my name, but I knew he knew it. He knew me. Every part of me. Not just the stuff I showed people, but the stuff I kept hidden even from myself. The fears. The guilt. The things I wished I hadn't done. The moments I felt invisible. It was all right there between us. And yet I didn't feel shame. I didn't feel small. I felt seen. It was the kind of seeing that didn't hurt. It healed. I knew right away he wasn't there to judge me. He was there to show me who I really was. Not who I pretended to be. Not who other people thought I was. Who I actually was underneath everything. Suddenly, memories started coming at me. Not like a movie, more like a flash of feelings. The day I helped a kid at school who was being bullied. The time I lied to my dad about something stupid. A moment when I cried alone in my room, not even sure why. All of it came back and it all mattered. Every single piece. Through all of it, he stood there, this being of light, just watching, knowing, loving. And then he spoke again. Not with a voice, but directly into my spirit. You're seeing behind what's real. When I heard that, something inside me cracked open. Like my life up to that moment had just been a shadow of what was possible. And here, now, I was finally awake. This was it. This was what I was born for. Not just this place, but this moment. This truth. This knowing. I didn't understand everything yet, but I knew my life had never been random. I had been seen from the very beginning. After the memories faded, the light around us began to change. The tunnel slowly disappeared and we were somewhere new. There was no sky, no ground, just space. But it wasn't empty. All around us were threads of light stretching across the air like cords. Some were thick and bright. Some were dim, barely glowing. Others flickered like they were about to go out. I turned to look at them, confused. I didn't have to ask. The light beside me, Jesus, though I hadn't said his name yet, was already answering me inside. These are prayers, Jordan. I didn't get it at first. I thought prayers were just words. Stuff people said before bed or when things got hard. But here, they were alive. I could feel them moving. Some pulsed like heartbeats. Others trembled. Some didn't move at all. They looked frozen in midair, stuck between being spoken and being forgotten. He brought me closer to one. It was thin, almost invisible. I reached out without thinking, and when I touched it, a wave of sadness hit me so hard it almost knocked me back. I saw a woman in her kitchen, hands shaking, whispering a prayer with tears on her face. I didn't know her, but I felt every word like it was my own. She wasn't praying out loud, just thinking it. But even that had become part of this place. Jesus said, some prayers are spoken with voices. Others are whispered in the dark. And some never leave the heart. But I hear them all. Then he turned toward one thread that was barely hanging on. It looked like it had broken, like someone gave up halfway through. He pointed and said, that one is your dad's. My chest tightened. In the vision, I saw my dad sitting alone in the garage late at night. The engine wasn't running. He was just sitting there, staring at the floor, his hand covering his mouth. Then he whispered, God, I don't know what I'm doing anymore. Just once. No fancy words. No long prayer. Just that. And then silence. I never knew he said that. I never knew he'd even tried. Jesus walked toward that broken thread and touched it. The light started to flow again. The break healed like a wound being closed. The dimness faded. It began to pulse steady and strong. He looked at me and said, nothing spoken and hope is forgotten. I couldn't speak. I wanted to cry but couldn't. I felt everything all at once, shame, love, guilt, wonder. My dad had been hurting more than I knew, and God had heard him. Not just heard, but remembered. That moment changed something in me. I realized prayer wasn't about getting answers. It was about connection. And even when we feel like no one's listening, heaven is still holding on. The space around us shifted again, like we were moving without walking. 1 second we were surrounded by light threads, and the next we were standing in an open field. At least it looked like a field. There was no grass, no trees, just smooth ground that seemed to breathe beneath my feet. Above us, the sky moved like water, soft waves of color rolling across it without a sound. Everything was quiet, but not empty. The silence here felt heavy, like it was carrying something unspoken. Scattered across the field were glowing stones floating just above the ground. Each one gave off a soft hum, like music you couldn't hear with your ears but could feel in your chest. Some glowed bright and steady. Others flickered like a flame struggling to stay lit. Jesus stood beside me and said, these are the ones who almost made it. I didn't understand at first. Then it hit me, each stone was a person. A soul. They were close, he said. They felt me. They heard me. But something made them stop before they said yes. I walked slowly among the stones. I could feel stories in each one. Some had been full of pain. Others full of confusion. Some had simply been too tired to keep trying. They weren't evil. They weren't lost because they hated God. They just gave up. I stopped in front of one stone that was barely glowing. The sadness coming from it was deep. Not dramatic, just quiet. Like someone who cried alone every night until they stopped crying at all. Jesus touched the stone, and it flared with light for a moment. Even the ones who quit. I still remember them, he said. That sentence broke something in me. I looked around at all those stones, all those souls who were so close but turned away. I didn't feel fear. I felt sorrow. Not just mine, his. Jesus wasn't angry at them. He was grieving them. The field felt like both a promise and a loss. A place full of what could have been. A place that reminded me how close people can get without ever crossing over. I didn't want to leave, but I knew we had to. There was more he needed to show me. But I carried the weight of that field with me. Still do. We left the field, and again, the space around us shifted. There were no steps, no sense of direction, just a quiet pull, like the place itself was guiding us. When we stopped, I knew we were somewhere different. It was a garden. Not like any garden I'd ever seen on Earth. This one felt alive, not just growing, but aware. The trees didn't sway because of wind. They moved like they knew I was there. The flowers didn't just look pretty. They gave off a feeling, like joy and peace blended into something you could feel in your bones. Even the soil beneath my feet felt warm, like it had a heartbeat. In the center of the garden was a small pond. The water was perfectly still, but not clear. It wasn't showing reflections of faces or trees. When I stepped closer and looked in, I didn't see myself. I saw moments, memories, feelings I'd buried. Times I felt too small to matter. Times I felt alone, even in a room full of people. Times I smiled in front of others while breaking inside. I didn't want to look, but I couldn't turn away. Jesus stood beside me. He didn't speak right away. We just stood there in silence, the garden wrapping around us like a blanket. After a long moment, he said, This is where I bring the ones too tired to carry pain. His words settled into me like a soft weight. Not heavy, just true. This place isn't about fixing, he said. It's about resting, about letting go. I'd always thought healing meant being strong, pushing through, praying harder, being better. But here, it wasn't about effort. It was about stillness, about surrender. He told me most people never find this place. Not because it's far, but because they never stop long enough to let him bring them here. They're too busy trying to hold it all together, too afraid to look at the hurt, too convinced they have to stay strong. In that moment, I understood something I hadn't before. Real healing doesn't always come with loud miracles or big moments. Sometimes it comes in silence, in surrender, in being willing to sit beside Jesus and finally let yourself be held. I didn't speak, I just breathed. And for the first time in a long time, I felt light. The garden slowly faded and I felt myself being lifted again, not up into the sky, but into something deeper. We weren't floating through space. It felt more like we were moving through time, through layers of meaning. Then I saw it. Earth. But not like a globe or a picture. It was alive, beating like a heart, made of light and choices. I could see cities, towns, villages, all pulsing with movement. Some places glowed bright, almost too bright to look at. Others were dim, like the light was slipping away. Jesus stood beside me and pointed. These places glow with prayer, he said. I looked closer and saw little flames rising from homes, from churches, even from empty rooms. Every flame was a prayer, some loud, some whispered, some too soft for the world to hear, but still burning. Then I saw the darker places. Not evil, just distracted. Busy. Loud. People running in every direction, looking down at their phones, their schedules, their wants. It wasn't hate keeping the light away. It was noise. Jesus said the enemy doesn't always destroy. Sometimes he just distracts. I saw churches that used to shine like beacons. Now their light barely flickered. Pastors who once heard God clearly were now chasing applause. Their words were polished, but their spirits felt far away. The light was still there, but thin, like it was being stretched too far. But then Jesus showed me something else. Sparks. Tiny, steady flames scattered all over the map. I leaned in and saw who they were. Kids praying alone in their rooms, even when no one taught them how. Grandparents whispering names every night before bed. People walking away from crowds just to sit in silence with God. Jesus said, "These are my sent ones." They weren't famous. Most of them were unnoticed. But they carried something strong, faith that didn't need attention. Love that didn't need praise. As I watched, I saw how these sparks were holding back darkness. One spark here, one spark there. Quiet but steady. Real. I understood then, this wasn't just about what's coming. It was about what's already happening. A quiet war between noise and truth. And the people who chose truth even in secret were keeping the world from slipping too far. As I watched the sparks hold back the dark, something shifted again. Jesus looked away for just a moment, and in that moment I saw what happened when the sparks began to go out. One by one, little flames faded. Some dimmed slowly, others disappeared all at once. And as they vanished, the darkness started to spread. Not fast, but steady. It crept into the cities, into the homes, into the hearts of people who didn't even notice it happening. The light didn't fight back with force. It simply faded wherever the sparks went silent. My chest tightened. I wanted to scream, to stop it, to run into the world and light every flame again. But I couldn't move. I just stood there, watching it all unfold. Then Jesus turned back to me. His face was full of sorrow, but also something deeper, urgency. "You're not being sent back to survive," he said. "You're being sent back to speak." I didn't want to hear that. I didn't want to go back. I wanted to stay in this peace, in this love, in this place where everything made sense. I had never felt so whole, so safe, so seen. The thought of leaving it hurt more than anything I'd ever felt before. "Please," I said without speaking. "Let me stay." He reached out his hand and touched my chest, right where my heart should have been. "You carry what you've seen now," he said. "That's the fire. That's the reason. Now go." I didn't move. I didn't agree. But the moment he said it, everything around me began to fall away. The light, the world, even his presence, it all peeled back like I was being pulled in reverse. Then air. I gasped so hard it felt like my lungs exploded. My eyes flew open. I was back. The ceiling of the hospital room spun above me. Machines beeped. A nurse shouted. My dad was yelling for help. But I didn't see any of that first. What I saw was the fire. still burning inside me. The message, the call. It wasn't just a memory. It was alive. And I knew I wasn't the same anymore. I hadn't just come back from death. I'd been sent. I spent 3 days in that hospital bed without saying a word. The doctors said I'd been gone for nearly 10 minutes before they brought me back. They didn't have answers. Just phrases like miracle and unexplained recovery. But I didn't need them to explain it. I knew exactly where I'd been. My dad never left my side. He just sat there, holding my hand, eyes red, whispering prayers he didn't think I could hear. Sometimes I looked over at him and wanted to speak, but the words wouldn't come yet. I was still holding everything inside, letting it settle. Letting it root. When I finally spoke, it was barely above a whisper. "It's already moving." He looked at me like he didn't understand. But his eyes softened. He knew something had happened, something big. Over the next few days, I slowly told him the whole story. I expected doubt, maybe even fear. But he didn't question any of it. He just cried. Then he said, "I knew he wasn't done with us." Since then, everything feels different. I don't see the world the same way. When I walk into a room, I can feel things I couldn't before. I can sense when someone's hurting, even if they're smiling. I can feel prayers, like echoes hanging in the air. Sometimes I feel drawn to people I've never met, like God is pointing at them without words. It's not scary. It's just real. I don't tell everyone what happened, not because I'm ashamed, but because I know some people won't be ready to hear it. But when someone is hurting, when someone's lost, when someone says they don't know if God hears them, I speak. Because I know now, He hears everything. And if you're reading this or listening to it or just feeling something stir deep inside you, you're not crazy. You're not broken. You're not making it up. If you felt different, if you felt called, it's because you are. You're not here by accident. There's a reason you felt like you didn't fit, like you were meant for something more. God is calling you. He doesn't wait for people to be perfect. He looks for people who are willing. So don't wait. Speak truth. Love deeply. Pray boldly. The fire is already in you. Let it burn.